All right, welcome you to the Parson Manor website. We're doing something a little bit different today. I just purchased from China something called Musically. It is a bridge replacement with a little tremolo bar that you do that to your guitar with. A little tremolo came with the springs and all the stuff I will need to install it. They even sent me a guitar pick with it, which I was real surprised that they sent that. That's odd. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be replacing the bridge on this Fender Stratocaster. It is a Squire version. Believe me, it is not a fancy one. It's not an expensive one at all. I think I went to the music store 2 weeks ago. I think the guy told me I could probably replace it for under 200 bucks with no trouble at all if I wanted a brand new one. So for less than 10% of the cost of a new one, I thought I would just replace this because, listen, I got parts that are loose in there. And I don't think you can see it, but where the springs connect here, there's only one spring still holding it. This plastic is actually broken, or this metal. It's what my dad would call pot metal. It's not a good metal at all, and it may even be a composite material of something. I haven't taken it out yet to look, and that's what I'm going to show you today. We're going to take this bad boy apart. I'm going to replace this and the springs and put me a brand new bar on there and see how that goes. It's not a difficult process at all. In fact, it's probably one of the easiest things it's easier to put this thing on than it is to put strings on a guitar. So now the adjustments is another story. Every spot that you hang a spring has a place for, it's got Allen screws in it. You use a little bitty Allen wrench, and each one of them has two screws right there on the end. I think you can see those. Two Allen on each end that you have to make your adjustments to raise or lower the pitch of the strings. And so there's a lot of fine adjustments on it. These guys that set the guitars up for these players that, you know, travel all around the world making music, they've got guys that their whole job is to set up guitars, and they know how much that screw there needs to be adjusted because there's a spring right in front of it, as you can see, and they know how much those Allens right there have to be adjusted, and they know how much pressure you're going to see when I take this apart. There's two screws in here that actually affect the tension of the spring, and they know how much to adjust that. They can get it just so fine-tuned. My whole life, I grew up, this is it right here. You tune with those and you don't worry about it. This is not a very expensive set of tuning keys for sure, but they've got gears inside them which make them very precise. The pressure keys, I have an old guitar with just pressure tuning keys, which it turns and it just winds a string up on it without any precision whatsoever, and it falls out of tune all the time. Well, these are better. These are not a high quality one for sure. I think this thing's made in Korea, if I'm not mistaken. Fender doesn't make these. They've sold this out to a company that manufactures them in Korea. At least this one was. I looked up the serial number, and that's exactly what it is. But you know what? It plays great when it's working, and of course it stopped working like it should. And I may do a video and replace this. I think I've got a short in it. I may only have to repair it with a little soldering work, but we're going to look at it anyway if we need to. And then I'm going to clean it up and give it a bath. This is filthy. It's been sitting up here in the study for a long, long time. This actually belongs to my son, and he moved, didn't take it with him, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to life, and I'm thankful for it. I think my brother gave it to my son years ago. So let's get on this job and see what we can do. So here we are on the table. The tools that you actually need to do this with are your hands and a Phillips tipped screwdriver, and that is it. I mean, you don't need anything else. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the strings that I've got here, and I have a handy dandy tool that I love. This thing right here, it goes on a tuning key at the top, and you just spin it and you'll take them right off. They sell these things for just about nothing. This is a Jim Dunlop, and it's the quickest way to take the strings off. So let me remove the strings right quick and we'll get started. Just fit this tool directly over the end of this, and you just spin it, and it takes them right off if I watch it and not the camera. And then it just comes right off, it loosens it, and then you can pull the string off. So there's no trouble whatsoever to use that particular device. Now this has string guides on it. You may look right here, there's a string guide right here that these go under to help keep the distance and spacing right. Now, you know, for a knockoff, and I wouldn't say it's a knockoff. Some people go, no, it's not. It's a real Stratocaster. That's the name brand. They sold it as a name brand, and I get that. But for a knockoff guitar and not a top line guitar like this, they actually have some neat little perks that they put on all these particular things. So it's very nice. Go ahead and take the rest of these strings off now. Now I've got the strings disconnected from the head, and now I've got all these strings here, and you're like, well, how do you get them out? Well, the way that this particular bar is set up, there is your strings actually come through this hole here. One of these holes here runs up inside it and comes out this thing. What that does is provides a longer run against the chance of the head of the string being broken off. Comes up through here smoothly. Gives you many more adjustments. As you can see, each one of these adjustments individually, it gives you so much more control over the precision. Now somebody might argue, well, with a little cheap guitar like that, what good's that? Well, every little piece of precision work counts. Every little thing like that makes a difference. And so the strings, actually, the way you take them out is through the back end of this guitar. So you're looking down inside these holes here, and the strings pop out like that when you push from the back side, and you just pull the string out at that point. So each one of them comes out just like that. There's no trouble to get them out. So that's how that works. When you're talking about precision on an instrument, tuning keys like these pressure keys, they're just made of wood, and the way that you make sure that they stay in place is you force them with your finger by pressing down, and then you tighten your string however you need to. And this is an old fiddle. It was found in an attic of a house years and years ago as the house was being torn down. My dad was part of the crew that tore the house down, and he brought it home. Now, these are handmade keys, if you'll notice. These weren't the ones that actually came on this thing. It was missing all of those. So my dad found, I think, an old Foxfire book or something. I don't know where he found it, but he made these little keys, and all they are, he push them in. Now, you can buy them, but he figured, why buy them when I can just take a piece of wood and carve them out? He also came down here and repaired this bridge on the thing. And see, there's no adjustments whatsoever here or here. He had to put a piece of copper wire here, built this little bridge right here. The nut's still in fairly good shape. It's a little bit broken right there on the end. But this is no precision tuning whatsoever. This thing would have to be tuned pretty often. This guitar I'm working on, however, has dozens. It seems like just it's got 1, 2, 3, 4. It's got at least 4, maybe 5 precision tuning things that something like this old instrument doesn't. So even though this is an inexpensive guitar, it has the advantage of precision tuning. Now I've got another fiddle down there that has precision tuning. It has has screws down here that you can tune with and things of that nature. So anything you can add to a rather inexpensive instrument will make it better. Even putting good strings on a cheap guitar can make a difference. I'm going to go ahead and remove this back plate so you can see exactly what's involved. There's only 6 screws that hold this little plastic back plate on, and you can see exactly the simplicity of what's included inside this. I take all my screws and I put them in a little parts keeper over here. I'm working on a gun mat that I use to clean my guns on. It's got a little keeper tray over there to put things in. But you pull this off, and here's the interior right here. And very simple. Now you'll notice that my springs are loose. They are broken. This is broken, and the springs just popped out under the tension. There's the 2 adjusting screws right there to allow you to make this bar move in and out. Now, they sent me a new one. I don't need to replace it. There is nothing wrong with the one that I've got on there. It's perfectly fine. In fact, I really don't want to do it because there is a ground wire here on this thing, and I just don't want to have to take that ground wire off and resolder it, as you can see how that's set up. And now there's an indent in this, just like there is on the other one, right in the dead center. You can see that's where you're supposed to hook your wire through it. You just hook the little twist of the wire through it and then solder it in place. Keep this thing grounded so you won't get shocked when it rains on you and you're out there playing. But anyway, here's what it looks like. Very simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the springs and take them out. I am going to put new springs on just because of the age of the springs. They are probably stretched to some degree. Now, here's the trick that you want to, or not a trick, but something you want to pay attention to. If you want to pull that out, all you got to do is push that forward and lift it out. But if it's too tight, these screws are designed to be screwed in and out. They actually sent me 2 new screws for it that actually go in here. Different type screws completely, but the thing that I noticed as I was looking at it is the threads on this screw are smaller than these. And I don't want to pull this out and then have trouble going into this type wood here, which is just a laminate wood. I don't want to have a smaller screw going into a larger hole and it not holding like I want. I want this to hold. One little thing I wanted to point out here is on this bar, the replacement bar that they sent me, there's a little tiny hole in it right here on the end. That is normally where this little wire would go through, but one guy was telling me he avoids putting wires through little holes like this because there is motion on this when you put this bar on the front. And he said, and any time that wire is laying against a piece of metal, it's going to rub a little bit. He said you would think, well, that won't make any difference because it'll just ground out on this up here, because that's the whole purpose, is it's a ground wire, but it could also break the wire in two over time. Now, I've never seen that happen, and if it did happen, I think that'd be one in a million chances, but it's just something somebody had mentioned to me once, and I thought I'd pass that on to you. So now we've got all the springs out, and now we're going to pull these screws out here and simply lift this straight out. So let me go ahead and start on those. Now this is a genuine, not a Fender replacement part. Keep that in mind. This is not made by Fender. And so one of the things I've got to do is when I take this off, which is, let's see how simple it lifts out. Whoa, look at the damage to that thing. That's what happens over time. Heat, time, motion. It busted it all to pieces so that there's big chunks actually, and this is all cracked. That is a type of pot metal, and it has just literally got crumbles all in it like old concrete or something, and so it was no good. But something I want to point out, and I'm so surprised, the packaging of this thing from China. I mean, look here, they put this little piece of paper in it so that it would protect it from being scratched. And I mean, I don't know why they would be so careful, but sometimes when you get these little import items like that, you're like, man, they went to the extra mile on that thing. Now you'll notice there's no scratches or any problems like that, but there's a part of this that somebody pointed out to me one time you need to pay attention to. This is beveled right here, which means that when you use this little booger right here, it will allow you to pull it forward as you lean on it. So when you tighten these screws down, don't tighten it down so hard that this thing is tilted forward and screwed to the deck like that, because then you can't move it. There will be a little bit of space between this part and the guitar. So there'll be a little space there because this needs to sit flat against the back of the guitar here. So these aren't going to be tightened down as hard as you can get them. They'll just be torqued slightly, but you'll want this because when you hook the springs to it, it's going to pull it back a little bit so that you can wow when you use your guitar. It looks rusty here, and we'll clean that up, and I'm going to set this down in and start putting the screws in. I'm using the screws that they sent. Oh, by the way, when you use an aftermarket part like this, lay it down and make sure the holes actually line up, which they do. They line up perfectly, which I'm really happy about. But putting these screws in, I'm using the screws they sent me with the package. The screws are slightly, ever so slightly larger, unlike the ones on the inside. So, and I put these things in kind of like I put lug nuts on a tire. You know how you alternate, and that's what I'm going to do on these. I'm going to alternate. I don't use an electric screwdriver because my concern is that when I get down to the end, I'm going to tighten them too much. But as you can see, how it can lift like this because there is a little bit of bevel on that edge, and that's what you're going to want. You're going to want to be able to go wow, you know, and mash it and everything. You want it to move a little bit, but these are wood screws, so they'll go in and they'll hold fairly tight. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten these down right quick. Now with these tightened down, if there's space in between here and the guitar, as you can see, it moves a little bit. I'm not going to tighten them down all the way until I get the springs attached in the back of the guitar. So let me show you how that's going to look. Now watch me knock everything over here. So I've got my new springs, which are right here. All right, and this little loop, of course, goes over the end one here, and it just fits in. Not the string hole, it goes in the little bitty hole, and it points a little bit at an angle. Now, you can see how far away it is. I've got to pull this thing pretty good with the bare strength of my hands, but I got it in, no trouble. So this doesn't need to be adjusted. It doesn't look like, but you can see how it does here. Hook this one up same way. And then the one goes in the very middle. Wow, this one here, there we go. Wasn't turned correctly, but it's okay, I can still get it. All right, now, that's pretty tight. And what that does is it pulls this thing to hold it up a little bit. Now there's no movement whatsoever in it. So I'm going to slightly tighten these screws just enough. I had them pretty close to where I don't seal any space under them. And I mean, you don't, when you tighten strings on this thing, you are going to have some tension on it. So here these are, not adjusted, of course, don't have strings in them yet. I'll be putting that in later. And I'm going to attach my bar to it, which is really a very simple process. Put this thing in, don't cross thread it. Make sure it spins very freely as you're putting it in. And now that I've got it in, you can see, wow. How about that? And that's it. That's really all there is to installing one of these aftermarket bridges. It's a completely adjustable bridge. Total cost, bought on Amazon, probably 20 bucks. And you might even find it cheaper than that somewhere. Musician's Friend, somebody like that might sell them even cheaper. I don't have any links at all down there. I don't have an affiliate account yet with Amazon, so don't worry about that. I'm left with a couple of parts. I'm left with that inside spring hanger on the back. I'm left with the two screws, the anchor screws for that particular item. And all I've got to do is install my back plate now, and I'm finished with this project. So looking forward to putting some strings on it and trying to play it after I get it cleaned up.